the end of that year, you came back to New York, and then you got involved with New York School Ballet?
Well, I had taught a couple of classes prior to my going, and I had turned over a lot of my students to the New York School of Ballet, the ones that I thought really wanted to be professionals.
Mm-hmm. And that was the school that was right here in this neighborhood?
Yes, it was at 83rd and between 82nd and 83rd on Broadway, with Barnes and Noble.
Yes, and it was a beautiful space. Wasn't it designed particularly for
by
dance?
George Balanchine, and the floors were absolutely custom made. It was an incredible skill.
And high ceilings, big windows, beautiful.
I can't tell you. But one of the things that was amazing, I come back, and I had written Richard Thomas, who was the director of the school, and I said, I'm coming home, I have no money, I have no job, nothing. I didn't even think about working for him, but I said, if someone writes you or asks you about a teacher, think of me, because I'm coming home with this thing. Well, I came back, and he had a company called U.S. Terpsichore, and they were performing, and during the rehearsals, he needed somebody to fill in. So he asked me to be the teacher. And I guess, successful at it. I became very popular. And so when an opening came up, which was in just a matter of weeks, he gave me the class. And for the first time, he and his wife, Barbara Fallis, felt confident enough to leave their studio with somebody that he respected, and fortunately that was me. And I taught some of the biggest stars in the dance world. Sometimes petrified when I saw them in class, but I taught them. And the studio was gigantic. It was probably the largest studio in New York City. And they had a second studio that was a mirror image of the first, with a door between them. My classes were so packed that people would stand at the door and do the exercises in the other room. The piano was right there at the door. That's how large a class I had. Mm-hmm. Well, he came back and he couldn't believe what had happened, so I began to teach more and more.
And that was in about what year? The mid-60s? Oh, 70s?
No, 75. I started permanently as a teacher in 75. It was January 2nd or 3rd of 75.
Now, with your students, when they can't be in your class, when they're from Monday morning until Wednesday afternoon when they come back, is there something that you recommend to your students? I know that studio space, you've mentioned, is such a hard thing to come by. How do you recommend to your students that they prepare themselves from day to day? Is there some regimen outside of the official class for them to do?
I think all dancers should take 2 days off a week and do that. Mm-hmm. Let their bodies rest. Mm-hmm. Then the other 5 days work your tail off.
I see.
And
so they should go every day, Monday?
They should go Monday through Saturday. But I must tell you, I taught Monday through Sunday. I taught every day of the week. Mm-hmm. But I would recommend that not everybody could make it that way. And I remember when I first started teaching, I think the price of a 10-lesson class was something like $8. Mm-hmm. And now it's something like $100 for a 10-lesson class.
10 lessons for $8?
No. Yeah.
It was 80 cents a class.
Yeah.
Oh my word. I guess the question that I have about this is, for musicians, we take our one lesson, which may be significantly expensive, but then if you take that on Monday afternoon, then you're going to see the teacher again next Monday afternoon. You spend 6-8 hours a day working over your practice and scales and techniques and things like that. And is there, for dancers, is it inherent that the only time that they're truly working at what they're doing is when they're in the class? I guess they go to the gyms and they do stretching exercises and things. How does it work?
No, not necessarily. It's true. Class is not on a basis of one-to-one like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But as I say, it's possible to have 70 people in a class. Mm-hmm. And you can't really get around to everybody. And I tell them, I say, now look, if there's a step I give or a movement you're unsure of, work on it. If you have to do it on the subway platform, work on it. And you've got to come back, and the next time you come back to class, I want the step done. I did teach the children there, but I'm talking about the professional level classes. And I got, I think, great results, and I still get results from that same philosophy. If there's something that you can't do today, it doesn't mean you can't do it tomorrow, but you've got to work at it.
Right. Well, now you mentioned the fact that, of course, you have these wonderful professionals who would be such marvelous people to be in touch with, and in fact, for some teachers, an occasional situation of intimidation. I've had coachings with people that I thought, well, why in the world would that person want to come to me? But I have a different slant on things and make them think about something in a different way. But you mentioned that you have taught children and at a different level. So what would be your advice to teachers who have less advanced students? What would be the elements that they should concentrate on with young students of less experience?
Well, I think with all, of course, I came up in the days when the old Diagla teachers were still teaching, and they were rather hard and bitter about their careers being over, and would oftentimes take it out on you and be very rude. But I decided that I would not do that, and I don't recommend it. I get amused because people tell me how hard I am, but at the same time, these same people are bringing me flowers. And I said, well, how mean can I be if you're bringing me flowers? But the fact is that I'm a disciplinarian. I don't let a lot of things go by in class, and some things that go by, I may tell them privately. I can give you an example. This would never have happened when I was a student, but a guy came in with a baseball hat on. And I walked into class, and I saw the baseball hat, and I walked over to him, and I said very quietly to him, I said, I'm going to walk out of this room, and when I come back, that hat will be gone, or you will be gone. I don't want to make an issue out of it. So I just casually walked out of the room, and I came back. The baseball hat was gone, but I never saw the guy again, which is all right with me. I don't need that sort of thing. I think that all parents should work with the teacher in the sense that I tell my parents, you praise them, let me knock them down. That's what I'm here. I'm here to find out their mistakes and their weaknesses. But whatever they do for you, it's great, because they need that background, so they'll come back and willing to take some of the abuse.
Abuse, you speak of yourself as though, but I'm sure that your class is structured, it's also geared for success, and you give the appropriate line.
I tell my class, I say, I don't care why you're here. I don't care if you're here just for the exercise, your therapist sent you here, I don't care. To me, you're going to be a dancer. And if you don't like it, there's a studio across the hall. And that's the way I teach. And I do it with a lot of humor. I oftentimes tell the class that I am a stand-up comedian who happens to teach ballet. And I try in giving a correction not to pick on the person individually. Some people claim that I don't. How do I know you're talking to me? And I said, precede every correction with your name. I don't care what I said. You put your name before it. And I went into the dressing room one day, and this boy said, oh, you were so mean to me today. You were so hard on me. And I said, I don't even remember calling you out. I don't remember saying a word to you. You mean all those corrections weren't for me? Yes, they were for you, but they were for everybody else at the same time. And I just loved him. I just loved him. He was the ideal student.
He took you so seriously.
He took me so seriously that every correction I gave, he thought was directed directly toward him. And I said, all my students should feel that way. Because I don't like to say, Joe, you're doing this wrong. Mary, I think, you have no talent, no, I give a general correction. And then there are people who make a mistake that is peculiar to them and only to them. Then I will say, Mary Jane, I'm sorry, you've got to do this to do that, and this has to. But most of the time I will say, pull in your stomach, lift up your leg, place your body correctly on your feet, and tilt your head at the right angle, and assume. And then if I don't get it, I say, am I talking to the wall? Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying this thing just to hear my voice go on. I tell my class there's two priorities in dancing. I have two priorities, and they all know it because I will ask them at least 3 or 4 times a week, and I'll call them different. I say, what are my priorities in dancing? And they are musicality and line. The line means the perfection of what's there. One of my teachers said, if it isn't pretty, it isn't correct. So that should tell you something right then and there. But I do tell them that it's important. I start them off at the bar, and I'm very strict at the bar. I give I think, a very good warm-up bar. And the bar is for a warm-up plus, developing speed, correction, positions, and all the things that go on. That never varies. I don't care. When Cynthia Gregory comes to class, she gets the same bar if somebody is coming in and only has had a year's training. Then when we come into the center, I have been reprimanded or talked to by other teachers saying, you give a very fast class and that girl is not straightening her knee and she's not pointing her toe, or he's not doing this or he's not doing that. And I said, no, I know that. I say it very clearly. But he's not going to do it out here in the center of the floor until he can do it at the bar. And at the bar, we work on it. In the center of the floor, I want him to learn to move. I want him to get from one corner to the other corner. And I want movement comes first. And when I was teaching little children one day, I said, well, what is dance? Come on, tell me what is dance. In one word, tell me what dance is. And I got hard work, pain. And one little girl said, joy. And the next little girl said, movement. And I said, that's it. The joy of movement is dance. And if it isn't that, then take up needlepoint. Because at the end of needlepoint, you have a pillow. And if you're in here working like a dog, and you don't have anything to show for it, then it's a waste of time.
You have no product.
Yeah, you have no product. So I'm very verbal about this. I don't volunteer a lot of negative criticism, but don't ask. And I can give you an example of that. I went away and I had a very fine substitute come in, one of the top dancers, teachers in New York, but a little more strict than I am, and maybe not as humorous as I am. So this guy left, and when I came back, he was no longer in class, and it took about a month for him to come back to class. And he came over to me and he said, have I improved? And I would not have volunteered this. I said, no, not one iota. In fact, I think you've gone backwards. Well, I've never seen him since, which is all right with me. And then I had a case where a woman came to me and she said, well, this is the most difficult class I've ever taken. And I said, what if you notice on the board out there it says intermediate/advanced? It's not a beginner's class. She said, well, I have been dancing for 13 years. And maybe I overshot my mark here, but I said, lady, if I were you, I would go back and sue your other teachers because you have learned nothing. Now, that's not the kind of thing I'm terribly proud of.
No.
But these are, as I say, I wouldn't volunteer this information.
But she asked for it.
She asked for it. Don't ask and don't tell.